Hey, everybody. Hope you're all doing marvelously well. Here with the rather wonderful John Brandt. How are you?
I'm good. And
Excellent.
I hope you guys are good too.
Yeah, it's crazy times. Crazy, crazy times. But also, you know, silver lining, we get to do lots of this. Lots of, it's a good excuse to remember. Isn't it interesting? It's like, I don't know why we don't talk more often, quite frankly. I do try to send a lot of people your way, so I hope, I hope.
Really appreciate that. Yeah. We should do this more often. And I think that it could help your academy guys and everything else. I'm always, I've always said that to hold information hostage is criminal.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's what we tend to do in this industry. You know, if I got an edge here, I'm going to dole it out to only people who pay the big bucks. No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's information. Let's share it and let's all get better. So if I can share something and it can be helpful, yeah, let's do that.
Well, let's see who we got on here. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was wonderful, wonderful way of looking at it. And I agree 100%. So we have Mary and Sam. We have Rocco. We have Chaz, DJ Croj, Mark, Daniel, David, George, Tom, Darko, Mark, loads of people, Jens. Wow. How everybody? How are you all? It's great to see so many of you here. On for some of you, it's morning, and some of you it's early evening or mid-afternoon. I don't know is this a good time? Do we have any Australians? What's the time zone in Australia and New Zealand? It's hard to get the time right for everybody. So
It's probably about 2 a.m. for the Australians.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Never quite get it right. But this made the most amount of sense because it would either have to have been 7 a.m. for us, which never would have happened with Eric and his drive to get in the morning. Or it would have been later, which would have been like 2 a.m. for you. So, as it is, it's 12 minutes past 12 at night for you. Is that correct?
No, it's 12 minutes past 11.
Oh, 11. Oh, okay. Good.
Indonesians, they don't do this daylight savings BS. We, just plod right straight on.
I see. So, hi from Holland. Hi, not hardly. It's 10 p.m. in India. Hi there in India. Have you checked out our Hindi channel? We've started launching Hindi videos. 6:12 in Italy. Oh, so a good time for Italy. 12:12 in Ohio. Early evening in the UK. Wonderful. Well, so you and I have spoken a few times about this, and like I said, you've been in the forum as well and answered a question, which is amazing, which I'd love to do again, by the way. That would be really good. Give them access to the forum. I'm sure people would have questions. And I'm in the process, hopefully, we were talking about of buying a house. It's a very weird time to be buying a house. I started the escrow before the pandemic, but now, so finally we're going to build that second studio. Well, my 12th studio, but this.
It never ends, not till you're dead.
Yeah. So we were talking offline while Eric was getting set up. I think it'd be quite kind of fun to get a little bit of background that I never knew. Because you mentioned Jeremy Stacey, so immediately we started talking about Fleetwood Mac and everything to do with that. How did you end up doing this? How did you get to into studio acoustics and just acoustics in general? Because I know you're not just restricted to studios.
Always been interested in studio acoustics, of course. I started off really. I've always been very technical and tried to understand how things are made and why and the electronics and such. And I've followed and studied Bill Whitlock for a very long time, and as well as some of the early designers, especially Tom Hidley. And but it's one of those processes that we go through. When you're following a path in life, you can take different turns and branches, and if you follow your heart, you usually end up where you're supposed to be. You know? So, and that's kind of what I did. I sure as hell took a long roundabout way to get here, but here we are.
Yeah, I think what's the Oscar Wilde quote? A man's past is his contribution to the future. I think you know life experiences are what make us. I don't know. You have to have a sense of compassion and understanding, which you don't really get until you've experienced it. You know, I amuse myself watching younger friends of mine commenting in a way that I laugh at myself going, God, I used to say things like that. I used to say silly things like that. You know, it's like, but you have to say those things, you know, before, you know, you have to have those life experiences so you can get to this place where you're at now. Hey, so carry on.
Reminds me of the Star Trek film. I can't remember the name of it, but it was something to do with, there was this Vulcan mystic who was going to people, say, give me your pain, and they would take the pain away. It's like this thing, and they were searching for this God thing that was hidden in this planet somewhere. I can't remember what the title of that one film was. But anyway, Kirk said, no, I need my pain. It's who I am.
Sure.
It makes me, and it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
You know, and besides, if I didn't have pain, when I woke up in the morning, I'd think I was dead. I'm joking. Old people joke. But
I don't think you're quite that old to worry about that yet.
I'm 3 years from 70, so.
Oh, there you go. 60 is the new 40. There you go.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
So. Firstly, just because I actually want to know before we get really stuck into the acoustics, what speakers are those behind you?
Those are J.H. Brandt speakers.
Oh, those are your own speakers?
It's my design, yes.
Fantastic.
This is a system I've been working on for several years because I'm so busy drawing right here, doing the AutoCAD and consulting and that kind of stuff, that's back burner stuff. But hopefully, I will be able to bring it out someday, soon. I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see how it goes.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I've never. That's why I've never seen them before. I was like, I've never seen them before, and now I have.
Yeah. Well, Hidley's always had his own speakers.
Yeah.
To suit his rooms and stuff. But I'm not a big fan of room designed for a certain speaker.
Sure.
It shouldn't. The room should be accurate. That's all.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of questions. I think everybody here, by the way, please have some questions armed and ready to go. But otherwise, I'm just going to ask some really general stuff. Is there any, I suppose the question is, I'm trying to think of the right way of phrasing it. Is there any kind of laws for speaker size versus like driver size versus room size? Meaning, because people come to me all the time, I'm trying to think of a sort of generic question. I get asked all the time, my room is, only 6 foot by 6 foot by 6, like a square box. Can I put a sub in there? Can I put 10-inch speakers in there? Is there anything any kind of law or anything, or is it really, was there no, you know what I'm saying?
The only rule is convergence.
Okay.
If you have a multiple speaker system and if you have these real tall audiophile arrays, you have to be away from them before you get convergence from all the speakers so that everything's focused. Okay.
Makes sense.
If you have a small speaker system, I mean, even the Quest heads with the 12-inch speaker, they're clustered nicely. You can have them about 2 feet. No, about three and a half feet away.
Oh, okay. That's a huge point. That's a huge point. 'Cause I never would have known that or thought that. Because it's really hard to have those conversations because I get asked all the time these kind of questions. And I can speak from an experience of having had some pretty decent sized control rooms and having small control rooms and everything in between. And so I have a sort of personal opinion, but it's not based on any fact.
The most important parameter for a speaker in any room is that they are capable of producing 113 decibels of dBA at the mix position without distortion. Now, not that you're going to play them like that, but for these peaks and these hits that you're listening to, and you're trying to EQ and trying to get the sense of where to place them in the mix. Sometimes things will pop up. They need to be able to reproduce that without room compression, without a distortion. And that is really the bottom line right there. is the power.
So my question is then, so I love that idea. As long as they're a close cluster, then it's not going to be an issue, so you can get away with bigger monitors. So I didn't know that. That's good. What about low end, though? Is there any kind of cubic kind of, thing where if a room's too small, there's too much low end compression? I don't know. I'm making things up. I'm just sort of trying to understand.
Yeah. What happens in a small room is you do not have enough space for waves to exist.
Right.
Now, pressure differences can exist, and they work just fine. Let me show you an example. Where is it? Right here. These are pressure transducers.
Right.
Work great in this little ear canal. How can you get all that bass from them? Because it's in the pressure zone. It's pressure. Yeah. All it is pressure. So, but if your sub or speakers are ported, you can only get down to the wave frequency of your room. And once it gets there, it becomes a little erratic at the port frequency and the way that relates to the longest distance, longest dimension of your room.
Right.
Say it's 35 hertz.
Right.
And that sub is not going to work below that. It'll work a little bit, but it'll be erratic, very erratic and nonlinear. So that's why, as you see behind me, I've got this sealed sub. It's a non-ported. It will go to 15 in any room.
Right.
That's the trick. You need to get a sealed sub if you have a small room, not a ported sub, and then you can create pressure waves because. This is for your audience. I know you understand this, but to create pressure, you need to have something that can expand and contract in the room to change the pressure in the room. Okay. Now, if the speaker has a port, the diaphragm will move forward. Mm-hmm. It'll compress the air here, and it'll create a vacuum back here. So the air will rush right around to fill that vacuum through the port, and it won't create any pressure in the room. That's what happens when you have a ported speaker.
But so I'm going to ask this question. So many great sounding speakers are ported. Is that why do they port then if that's going to be an issue?
Well, they're not designed for small rooms.
Right. So, but then what's the advantage? I suppose what I'm trying to understand is, so why port or why not port? I can understand why you don't port now, but why do people port then?
It extends the low frequency response at the sacrifice of linearity at the low end.
Right.
All my speakers are non-ported, and you have I like natural wood and I like natural stain. Some people like it painted, and porting is painting, and I don't know. I'm joking, but. You get a 12 dB natural roll-off with a non-ported system. It's just simple. With a ported system, you can get an 18 dB or a 24 dB knee where it cuts off, but it extends that knee goes further deeper bass.
Yeah, but I didn't when I built probably the only studio I've had built somewhat properly. We actually filled all the floors with sand. Mm-hmm. And then we broke the concrete between the control room and the live room, and there was an actual gap, so that no walls were connected to each other. So there was that was the deadest room I've ever built in my life. It was fantastic. We had the Iggy and the Stooges rehearsing in my live room while I was mixing in the control room, and trust me, Iggy and the Stooges was very loud.
Yeah.
Two full Marshall stacks and two full 8x10 caps. So it was loud in there, and. We still didn't hear it. Or what we heard was occasionally. Adrian says, any advice on faking symmetry, at the listening position? My right wall is brick constructed, but the left is drywall, air gaps, drywall tile, but it's adjoining a bathroom beyond this room. So he's just basically saying he's got two completely different structures. Is that something you maybe just put a curtain on both sides or even it out? How?
No. You will have to test and adjust, either move your position off center so that you're actually a little bit off visual center, but you're centered acoustically for your bass. Now, sometimes the bass asymmetry is, it's one of those things you got to deal with.
Yeah.
But, let's get back to, now I'm going to address this because I've always say, what Clint Eastwood said in Dirty Harry, a man's got to know his limitations. So if you
Sure.
know your limitations, you have these are your limitations. Okay, we'll work in that, and we'll fit our room up, and so that we can work. And you do that, and all great engineers that I know do that, and they don't actually they never worked with much treatment.
Yeah. I don't have a huge amount here, but I have I still have bass traps in the ceiling and porting, and there's quite a lot of stuff done in here, but it's all covered so nobody knows. But there are bass traps and other things in here. I just don't have a cloud flown above me, which I suppose, but we've done so many sweeps in here, and all we got is that classic kind of low bump and dip because of the console. And because I've been mixing on consoles my whole life, it doesn't bother me because I'm used to it.
Yeah, you're used to it.
Yeah.
Right. You insert your own algorithm into your jellyware and you process it. Yeah, no problem. But when you have a small room, you have to deal with a lot of different things. And there are so many different solutions to similar problems, and because they're not really similar. They're only similar, but they're not alike, and you can't apply the same solution to everything.
Yeah.
There's no one size fits all, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And if you have a hard wall on your right and a soft wall on your left, most likely your bass is going to bounce and it's going to go through. It's not going to bounce from over here, but it's going to bounce from over there. It can be annoying, and it's something you're going to have to adjust to, because fixing it is a whole nother thing, and it's difficult.
Right. So there's
and expensive.
And expensive, so not sort of certain, not certain panels or anything would solve it or lessen it. So no sort of solutions that he could try that would help in that situation?
No, you don't have enough room.
Right.
It's too huge. I mean, look at the wedges in anechoic chambers.
Yeah.
They're 8 feet deep. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you can't fix it unless you build another mass on your left that matches the mass on the right, and then you can have the bass symmetry.
So I suppose that is the answer then. If he's got brick on one side and plasterboard on the other side, then does he put plasterboard over the brick?
Yeah, you're still going to have the brick. You can't lessen the mass. You know what I mean? So
right.
it's yeah.
Right. So you can help the high frequencies, but you can't do anything with the lows, I think is sort of what you're saying, yeah?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, it's something you have to deal with. Now, when we treat a room, the idea behind treating a room is to make it accurate, to make it tell the truth. And if your bass is not going to tell the truth, careful about how much you spend on treating it. Okay? There are thresholds at certain points of, you get a home studio, you start off with a bedroom or a living room, and you treat it out and you get to working in it. And you can make them, some of them you can make really, really good. I'm working on one right now for a man's home, and he's got a pretty nice sized room. And we're doing a really nice little studio in there, and it's going to be accurate, very accurate. Some are a little bit on the small side, and there are things that you just have to deal with until you can afford to get a little larger size. It's just physics, is all it is. It's physics, and there's no magic treatment or special thing that you can put in to fix some of this. If the room dimensions aren't right to start with, you're always going to have issues at these certain frequencies, always, no matter what treatment you put in.
Right. Emiliano's basically asking a variation of the same question. So if I had a wall on my right side and more open space on my left side, should I try to balance my left side with more treatment, or what do you think? Or do you think, what are you talking about, from moving from the center? So I suppose we'd have to know how much open space. You know what I mean? If it's just a case of repositioning himself.
Right. Yeah, you have to test, move, which is a pain in the ass, but
yeah,
just to get the base symmetry. And more often than not, you're not going to get base symmetry. It's not going to happen. So you can test and try a few things, but you probably end up getting right back in the middle and put treatment around you and do the best you can.
What do you do? Do you recommend like certain software to, obviously, first of all, sit down and see what it sounds like. Number one, obviously that makes sense. But do you recommend any kind of reading software to just kind of like see, how the left or the right, how out of balance they are? Is there any one that you recommend?
The main one that I recommend is Room EQ Wizard, because it's free.
Sure.
And because it works on both platforms, Mac and PC. Yep. So hands down, that's like the best. And believe it or not, actually, John McCulhey, I can't say his name, has designed it and continues to work on it. And it is one of the best softwares out there. You could pay $1,000 for some software, and I don't think it's as good as REW.
It's interesting because I did a whole thing with Callie the other day, and then we actually went to a studio and rang it out using Room EQ Wizard, and then we had a conversation on Facebook the other day, and they said the same thing. As the speaker designers, they use that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
And then any other reference? Any other preferences?
Well, for Macs, there's Fuzz Measure, but I can't read it. I'm a staunch PC guy. I mean, I have a gaming rig. It's got 8 cores overclocked to 5.2 gigahertz and water cooled. Right. And I use that for my AutoCAD. I gotta have it.
Yeah, I understand. My son has the same thing. He's like one of those water cooled. Looks very fancy. Yeah. It's a glass on one side, and you see all the colors and stuff like that. Let's keep looking at some questions here. Can you ask some? Did that one? Symmetry. Interesting question from Mary and Sam. If you're looking to gain investors for a business idea and building a teaching studio, should we have building blueprints and details ready before looking for investors? Well, I'll answer that and say yes, because if you are. That's a good. If you want to put together like a teaching facility, I know quite a few people have done that recently. Yeah, and you do have a building you are looking to build in. Yeah, definitely at least get the peripheral plans done, because otherwise you won't know how much it's going to cost.
Right.
I don't know what you charge to do something like that, and that's obviously for you to talk to a client. But yeah, you can approach John, and you can give him a plan. You can send him the dimensions of the room and tell him about what all. Well, why don't I stop talking? What do you need from somebody? If somebody was to send you, for you to obviously work remotely, what do you need? Do you need photos? You need dimensions? Give us a breakdown of the kind of information you would need to make a proper assessment.
If they're putting this in a building that's already there, I need the blueprints of the building, the whole nine, everything about the building.
Yep.
The place where they want to put it, and outline the area where they're thinking about doing, and then we need to have a discussion like this online and go over it and discuss it like we're having a meeting in my office, basically. And then they send photos and stuff, and you just continue to assess the situation. That's the critical point right there. You need to find out what you can do and what you can't do, the limitations of the property, the sound in the area, etc. So there's quite a few things that we need to find out. Right.
And so, but basically, essentially, you need blueprints of the building, you need photos, obviously, so you can see what the actual surfaces are, not just descriptions. It's probably, but you can do it. So basically, Mary and Sam, you could get all that information to John. John, what's your best email?
Just my website, john@jhbrandt.net.
Sorry, jhbrandt.net.
Yeah,
It's Brandt with a T, isn't it?
correct. It's Dutch.
Yeah, it's quite-
Brandt.
Yeah, my mother's mother was Dutch. Okay, and on my father's side, a bunch of Dutch. Lots of Dutch in my family. So okay, so it's John at jhbrandt, that's dt.net. So yeah, Mary, just email him. We've sent loads of people his way. Hopefully they tell us. They tell you they came from us. But yeah, but either way, it doesn't matter. I'm happy to refer. So yes, go to John and just give him a rough idea of what it is, and I'm sure, I don't want to speak for you, John, but I'm sure you can do it in a piecemeal fashion of like, okay, I'll charge you X number of dollars to get you enough information to get your investors, and then come back to me, and you know what I mean? I'm sure there's...
Can do, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Look, basically, this is what I tell everyone. I'm here to help, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I really am not. If I can help, let's talk. Let's
Great.
see what we can do. If not, let's figure out something that works for you. It's not what works for me. It's what works for you.
Great.
That's the important thing. And yeah, we'll just take it from there. That's how.
No, it's fantastic. I appreciate it. I'm sure everybody else does here. What are your suggestions for variable acoustic devices in one-room studio with inside-out walls and ceilings? I'm not sure what that means. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, good. What's inside-out walls and ceilings?
He's followed the John Sayers cult, and that's how I can forgive me, folks. And forgive me, John Sayers. He asked me not to post on his forum anymore because I disagreed with him, and I asked him questions, and he didn't like questions. So anyway.
Yeah. What is inside-out walls? What are they?
Inside out walls. Okay, the idea is to build a frame wall. You got a 3.5 inch deep frame.
Yeah.
And if you put your mass on the outside, and then you got 3.5 inches, you can fill with fiber and cover it with fabric, and there's your acoustic treatment. And let me tell you, that is more than I can describe as fucked up. Okay.
Right.
But what's 3.5 inches? You do the quarter wave calculation. 3.5 inches. What do you get? Little higher than 1 kilohertz, okay? So you're going to kill everything above 1K.
Yeah.
And what about the low frequency? What about the stuff that really counts? You got no treatment. You got nothing.
So he doesn't.
It's bad.
So he doesn't add anything other than that. That's just the solution.
Yeah. Well, it's a little trick thing that was it. Yeah, that was the solution. Yeah. And then when you do a room in a room, or another room next to that inside-out wall, you have to build it. You have to clad the wall, and then you tilt it up because you can't get in that 2-inch space that you've got there between the gypsum panels. Now, look up Marshall Long Acoustics, the Architectural Acoustics by Marshall Long. He explains about, in the section where he's talking about glass panes, because that's the only thing that's that close together, is panes of glass and how much soundproofing you get. He says, you don't get much difference in soundproofing until you move the panes apart by at least, 4 to 6 inches.
Yeah.
And then it starts working like a resonant assembly. So when you have these inside-out walls and they're real close together like that, you might as well just stick them together and forget about it, because you're not getting that much soundproofing. And you put a lot of money and effort into this thing that is backwards.
Well, the weirdest thing is actually that's sort of what we had in Harmony. And so we had this, I didn't build it, but we had this control room that was essentially somebody had put a framework on top of an existing wall. So if anybody remembers Harmony, it was like brown cloth covered, and there was this framework. And all they did was they built a framework across the ceiling and all the walls. So it was a wall inside of a wall. And it was just completely full of padding. And it wasn't a particularly good sounding control room. And the problem with the control room is that it was uneven. It was also almost triangular. It was like this weird kind of shape. I don't really know how to describe it. Not quite a full triangle, but sort of triangular. And I never really fully understood what was going on in there. But I don't know if that was deliberate or just somebody naively, when they built the control room, that's what they did. It's tough to say.
Probably a DIY design.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, may I speak on DIY design?
Yeah, please. Please.
Okay. Now, we all want to think of something and try something new, okay? And it's great, and I don't want to discourage it too much. However, when it comes to who's DIY designed an aircraft?
Definitely not me. Have you?
Oh, no, I haven't. I have no desire to kill
Mitchell.
anyone or to die. I'm not, I'd have to go through so many years of college to understand aerodynamics and the physics involved.
If you want me to be pedantic, my uncle Pilcher, his great grandfather was one of the pioneers of flight, who actually died in a plane crash. Died. He was going to be one of the first. He was one of the first pioneers of flight. So that's pretty DIY. So I haven't personally, but I have a relative.
See, that's my point. I rest my case. So how much money and time? How many failures do you want to go through before you get it right?
Right.
That's my point about DIY design. Now, DIY build, that's a whole nother thing. And that's what I help people with all the time. I work with builders and I work with the owners DIYing it and provide help through the process. I'm a builder, so I know how to do it. And I can hold your hand, so to speak. But to DIY design it, oh my goodness, you know how many studios I've fucked up?
Yeah.
I'm just being as honest as I can be.
Yeah.
Sure. If you meet anybody that's successful at something, that means they fucked up way more times than anybody else.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well,
how many light bulbs failed?
You kissed a lot of frogs before you kissed a prince there.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, guys, hang on. Just you want to save some money? And DIY. No, don't do it. Just take your time, patience. Of course, for now, you can get some panels and put them up and work and get going, save your money, and then hire a designer. Don't have to hire me, please. Just get a good designer and do that. Somebody with a good track record. That's what you need to do.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I like that because it's what I relate to. I relate to the whole idea of make mistakes and then learn from them. This whole idea that there's all these geniuses running around is just absolutely insane. It drives me nuts.
It's not.
Yeah. Or what happens is, and I think very, very frequently in music, without getting too derailed, what happens quite frequently in music is somebody does something and they have a sound and they have a hit song in our, at least in the production profession, and then for about 18 months or 2 years they keep regurgitating that sound and that thing, and then of course time passes them by and their one skill set kind of came and went. So I think that whichever way you look at it, there's a difference. Somebody might DIY a studio. I did sort of. I DIY'd a live room in the old Swing House studio, and it ended up sounding absolutely amazing. It had this curved roof. I don't know what you call those roofs in Hollywood, but there's a name for it. The curved roof.
A dome?
It's got the open beams. There's all these buildings in Hollywood, huge warehouses. So we took that and we built a room inside of it, and we put up loads of panels and just messed around and got it to sound good. And now I go back and listen to the live room and I'm like, that doesn't just sound good. That sounds amazing. Wow, what happened? How did we do that? But there's no way I could replicate it. Yeah. Total accident. Just because we move panels around until it sounded good.
In this business, so many happy accidents.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And we all learn from them too. We go, oh, well, let's check that out. Okay, what happens here? And you analyze it, and then you figure out, you learn some new stuff, and it's great.
Yep.
Good.
Emiliano said, for low budget treatment, would you recommend more the foam pads or building panels? I think panels, please. Yeah.
Building panels. Just
Yeah.
go to Home Depot and get you some lightweight fiberglass and stuff some bags and panels.
Yeah.
It's cheap and easy to build. Unless, if you're open to the public, it needs to look nice. But if you're not, it doesn't even have to. You can have just stuff. It's fine.
Yeah.
As long as it works. There's a lot of. I do provide a lot of papers and data on my resources page. If you go there, download everything. Everything's there for you guys.
Yep.
To help you position things, etc.
Finding it now, I'll post it.
Okay.
Oh, you redid your site. Nice.
There's some panels there that you can build, some designs, some PDF designs on the resources page. You can take that and build those too.
Cool. So there's the resources page, which is great. I like that, doing the donate. That's nice.
Yeah, my wife's really happy when that happens. She's, oh, I got $20.
No, it's nice because I think that when you give away stuff for free and then you give people the option to reward you is just a good way of doing business. Yeah, I like
when I use REW, every client that we test with REW, then I send John $20 every time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to do that.
I agree. So, custom DOA portable booth plans, 67 pages of instructions. Wow, that's great. That's really cool. Loads of articles and stuff. So these are all articles you've written. I'd love for you to write some articles for us, and I will pay you to go up on the site. So I see you have some great stuff here. I hadn't really thought about that until now. What an idiot! Why didn't I think about that? Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be absolutely fantastic. We're at about 275,000 unique visitors a month, so lots of people would see it. That'd be amazing. Okay, let me see what other questions we got here. Last time I was at Sapphire Society meeting, there was a discussion on the Helmholtz resonators that could be installed between spaces between furniture and in spaces behind furniture, in walls, etc. What do you think of the Helmholtz resonators?
Yeah, Helmholtz, very nice. They work quite nicely. I use them in tracking rooms sometimes.
Right.
I've used them less and less over the past 5 or 10 years. Okay. For the very reason that they reflect everything but their resonant frequency. So they're big reflectors if they're not absorbing at those notes. And sometimes it's difficult to just tune them in just right. So I'm not really a big fan.
Right.
The only kind of resonant trapping that I do, or that I propose to use in a studio, in a tracking room, in a control room, is membrane traps, which are limp membranes that are weighted so with an airspace that tunes the resonance. But those are also reflective. Okay?
Right.
So if you use them in a control room, you need to have a broadband trap right in front of them, facing them, so that they're not reflective. They're at least absorptive to some degree. So that's how I build mine. And membranes are fine. You put them back on the wall, which is the closest to the boundary or pressure zone, where you have the highest pressure and the lowest velocity, and that's where they work the best.
Right.
So I'll put those in control rooms and tracking rooms. Actually, I don't use too many membrane traps in tracking rooms. I will use a lot of angled plywood panels filled with fiberglass, because you need bass trapping in a tracking room, but you don't need all the, I mean, to me, the RT60 curve applies to any room you use for either recording or mixing. You need to have a real controlled RT60. I'm really against live rooms. I'm for tracking rooms rather than live, because it should not have an ambient field. That way you can get a whole band in there and record them all at the same time, and you can get a room sound, yes, but it's not an ambient field.
Yeah.
So that you fall off from one mic to the next, and you can put a vocal in there, and you can put a compressor on them, and you're not picking up all the drums because there's enough fall off if the room's big enough.
There's a way to get both, though, because I do enjoy going into live rooms that sound like live rooms, especially for drums.
Yeah.
You know, my favorite drum rooms always have a sound to them.
You have to have a pretty big room.
Yeah, pretty big rooms. My old room was huge. It had a really high ceiling, and it was a great sounding room. And like I said, we accidentally controlled it nicely. But I think I remember when I did. I went to Boston, and Jack had gone into Aerosmith studio, which was in this huge estate, industrial estate, and he had deadened it down. It was a big room, deadened it down. And when we put the band in there and we started tracking drums, it's like I close my eyes and I think everybody's isolated in booths, and then I open them up and they're in this big room, and I'm like, I'm adding all this reverb to get the drums to sound like they're in a big room. So we had to find a kind of a compromise, and we started pulling back carpeting and pulling back stuff and starting miking reflected surfaces so that when the snare would be hit, it would go, be like a snare as opposed to flub, flub, flub and dead,
Right.
We had to get a compromise. We had to get the feeling of a rock band in a big room, which is what we wanted, which is what they were doing. But we wanted enough isolation so they could be all in the room. We didn't want to make a record because they'd made records up until the records they made with Jack, like Rocks and Toys in the Attic, were all done together with overdubs, but they were played together. But they'd had this 90s and early 2000s thing where basically they were, put a drum track down, edit it tight, put some samples in, do an overdub, and it was very disconnected. It didn't have a groove or a feel of a band. So he was trying to get back to that. But it was a lot of work to try and get both. So they probably come to you and say, hey, I want a live room that's live and dead. And I've been in rooms where they have panels that flip, so they're dead, or they can flip to a wooden surface. There's quite a few of those. Sunset has them in Studio 3. Have you had experience doing those kind of things?
Yes, I have, but I found the flips are unnecessary if the room is designed properly.
Right.
What you do in a live room or a tracking room, I prefer to call them a tracking room because they're still not live.
Sure, I understand.
If you're the room that you built, I would say that it let all the bass out. You didn't have a big bass rumble in there. It was tight as far as bass was concerned. So you had a good fall off between mics. You could get a whoosh, big sound because of the distance and all the reflective pieces, but it died away fairly quickly, I should think.
It was about 3/4 of a second.
But it was a big room.
Yeah, that's been my preferred. Anybody those watching will know that's my preferred size. I've noticed over the years that my ear gravitates to that sort of 3/4 of a second room sound. Like if I bring up a drum kit that's completely dry, or samples, or some kind of created emulation, I usually find if I'm putting about 75 milliseconds on a snare and a kick and toms to varying degrees, it starts to sound like what I expect drums in a room to sound like. Now, obviously, tempo can affect that. Yeah. Fast tempos, it's not going to work. But on regular, mid-up tempo, anywhere from 80 to 100, which is probably 90% of songs, 75 to 100 is almost every song on the radio, that it works. And it's interesting. Again, I think my ear has taught me that, like you were talking about earlier, sort of the making so many mistakes and doing it so many different ways. That's where I've ended up being happy with.
Yes. Yeah. In a lot of our tracking rooms, we have rock walls.
So that's So Scott's sorry, Scott. Lauren, my friend Lauren's asking now. He says, so live out the room reflection panels and dispersion. I think the question is like, then he's Kevin saying LED, LEDE, live end, dead end. Do you subscribe to that idea?
No, they're fucked.
Actually, I worked in Pachyderm, Kevin. Pachyderm's a very famous studio that did In Utero, and they have a slate area, and then they have a wood area. And when they track the drums, they would sometimes put it in the slate room. And when I asked the assistant, the engineer about it, he just said, "Yeah, it sounds fantastic in there, but it takes about a day to deaden it and get it just right." So I think, it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? It's like if you've got a ton of gobos and patience, you can do pretty much anything.
It's best to have your room designed so you have optimal trapping in your treatments. I mean, you look at what Hidley did at BOP.
BOP?
Look at the big BOP Studios in South Africa. Okay, huge monster place. And that's where they did Lion King at. That's where they recorded that at. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a really great live room, but it's not live. It's tight, but you get the reflections, you get the like you want, but it's not a thunder rumble thing. If you have a room tone, it's bad. If you get in any room where you have a certain tone that it adds to the instrument, whatever it is, drums, bass, guitar, voice, whatever, if it adds a tone, you're not going to be able to get that tone out of it. And all your records are going to sound the same. They're always going to have that tone in it. Well, that sounds just like that jazz session did. It's supposed to be metal, or whatever. So you want to have it treated enough to get rid of the tone. And that's what we do. I'll put a rock wall in most tracking rooms because for certain instruments, you want that kick, that slap, that snap. You put the drum kit closer to the rock wall, hit the snare, and it snaps just nice. And you get the, from all the, I use a lot of wood panels and slatted panels in a tracking room. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So Chaz says, John, do you have any experience or thoughts regarding ASC tube traps or similar solutions?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they were great. I remember when I was working with Bob Millsap, a guy from ASC came in with these new things. I mean, they were like, this is like, when was that, 84? When was that, 86? I don't remember. I think that was 84, I think. And they come in, this new thing, and man, we were rolling them everywhere. We were putting them here and there, because Bob's studio wasn't very well treated, and we'd roll them under the console, and it made a difference. Yeah, they work great, but it's just like ASC or Real Traps or GIK or whatever. Yeah, they work. Yeah,
I have a pair in mine. So I have one in the corner of the live room, the tracking room, sorry, and one in the other corner. So not many people see them, but yeah, we have a pair of them just in the corners, and it helps because my live room's got a fairly high ceiling for a very small room. Chaz has been to my studio, so he knows what I'm talking about. Did you see them, Chaz? They were in the corners. Not many people notice because all my walls are the same. That there is bass traps built in here and there, and it was definitely when they designed it. I didn't build this room; somebody else did. But it was it was designed by a film composer with somebody else's help. I don't think it's perfect, but I do think it's definitely usable. So yeah, I actually didn't know that's what they were called. I knew they were called tube traps, but I didn't realize ASC had designed them. And then I looked over and was like, oh yeah, that's what I've got. Okay, other questions? Can you port bass out of a room, like through the roof, but dampen enough to not upset your neighbors?
Oh, that's an interesting concept. That's what I do in a lot of our big rooms.
Yeah.
And I'm working on an ultimate design right now that incorporates a floor that is above the foundational floor. It's above there by about 4 feet. and there's an opening in front of the speakers where you have a bass trap, and it goes down under the floor and up and around to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge trap. It's an anechoic chamber down there, and that takes care of that those axial modes completely. But it's not easy to build. No, it's not for everyone. It's not definitely not for home studio.
Right. Yeah.
But the best port for bass, you open the door.
Fantastic. Yeah. But when we were in, what's his name? Brian, the mastering engineer, Brian, Eric, remember his name? We all know him. He does. Anyway, when we're in his place, he has like a small mastering room, but he had like a gap at the back, and he said that it was good because it allowed the bass to escape out the back, and he said that when he closed it off, the room wasn't usable, and as soon as he opened it up, it really helped. So I don't know the math that went into it. Probably not. Again, probably wasn't math. It was probably like, oh, that sounds better.
I've seen some designs like that with a chimney. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on building a room around voice over theater speaker cabinets? Do you know what that is? Voice.
Yes, I do.
I don't know what those are.
Yeah, my old friend in Branson, Missouri. Oh, come on, Charlie Chalmers. He loved those voice of speakers, voice of the theaters, and it's like designing a room around the Uri 811s.
Okay.
Horrible speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what LEDE concept was designed around those speakers.
Right. Yeah.
Need I say more?
Yeah. No, I understand. So yeah, it's kind of a catch-22. I suppose. Beyond your own design of speakers, do you have some favorites? It sounds like you like ATCs and PMCs.
I love both of those. PMCs lately, their tweeters have a rise in the frequency response, which I don't like, and that's like you got to put tissue paper on them, please. Come on, guys, get that together. And their service is a little bit snotty, but they're great speakers.
Who do you talk to at PMC? Who's your guy?
I had several clients talk to people there, and I don't know. I should shut up. I shouldn't say.
Well, because Maurice, who's also Dutch, is a good friend of mine, and if you, which is crazy because I consider him a good friend, but I don't use PMCs. And it's not. It's just because I'm used to. I know what I know, and I know my room. I'm mainly on 1032 Gen Lex, but then I have the really nice Trio 11 Focals. And I have Callies, and I have everything. I mean, we have Super Rocks, we have Unities, we have Eve Audio. I don't know. I can't think of a speaker we don't have, but I don't have PMCs.
You know what? I don't think there is a high-level speaker manufacturer today that isn't good, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
There's some really, really good speakers available out there at all price ranges. Here's a little humorous point about putting things in a studio. There are two of the worst things you can put in a studio room, a control room, is number one is the speakers, and number two is a console or a desk. And really, they do affect the room, usually in a bad way. So pick your speakers wisely, but if your room isn't treated, I saw this really funny meme the other day, and it's like found the scroll of truth, Real expensive speakers with a shitty room equals shitty speakers. So, treat your room. And most of those speakers will sound great.
Absolutely. So Trev says here, he goes, I'm starting the process of designing my home studio. Would it always be better to have separate tracking and control rooms, self-budget dependent? I mean, basically, I think what he's saying is he's probably has, I'm going to speak for you, Trevor. I'm guessing he's got a room that's assigned of like, here, honey, I'm assuming, this is your studio room, whatever it might be. You can have this room.
Yeah.
So it might be not big, but maybe big enough possibly to stick a wall in there and separate it. But I think his question is well founded, because I think these days, and you can speak to this better, I'm sure you have a lot of clients doing what I'm saying, what I'm about to say here. These days, multi-purpose solutions actually make sense for most people, price-wise. So you've got a room just about big enough to put a small drum kit in there, and also have a control room and just work on headphones. It's sort of necessity is the mother of invention. It's
Correct.
It's going to be a compromise, but it's probably a lot smarter than putting up some drywall and then having a tiny little control room.
Correct. This is the thing. If you have a decent room, it's a little larger than what you would think that you need for a control room, don't make it smaller. Right. Because the control room is the most important room in the studio, because if you can't mix,
sure,
you're going to have to take it somewhere else.
Yeah, if you can't effectively hear what you're recording, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Right. So make it a big room and design it properly, but don't DIY the design. To the last inquirer, don't DIY it.
Yeah, I mean,
DIY build.
John is not expensive, so if you don't mind me saying that, so just email him. But first of all, go to his site and see his free stuff, and then email him. And I'm sure he'll help for a very reasonable price. Even if it's just a peripheral questions and basic stuff, I'm sure there's some way you guys can work together where you get a lot of information. I'm all about that. I mean, anybody that knows me has watched any of the videos we do. That's what I'm all about. People send me 10 plugins a day to review. Easily. And, Waves is always on me, and I love Waves plugins. Like, Waves is always on me to review their latest and greatest. And I love the saturation plugins they've brought out this year. But they've sent other things, and they've brought out other things recently that I just can't really get behind. It's not that I don't think they're bad. They're good, but I'm not going to I like the Baby Audio stuff because it's inexpensive and it sounds great and it's really simple to use. The Denise Audio one we did yesterday is like the one reverb plugin that you could own that just would do everything you need for reverb. And that's why we talked to John. John is that. He's just like, it's somebody that's affordable, that has great knowledge and can help you, and I can get behind it. As opposed to, I'm sure there's lots of other people like John that are going to charge 10 times the amount of money and give you a cappuccino and a back rub. But that stuff, you know what I mean? It's the same philosophy. That's why I use a Yamaha guitar at $600.99 that my friends play. And
I'm not paying him to say this.
No, it's just, exactly. I think but that's why we have this community, because we're trying to cut through the BS, because there's so many. Yeah. God, every time I open up my YouTube channel, there's somebody advertising on the front of our videos for courses, to teach recording. And I watched somebody's course once, and the end of it, the mix was so bad, and they're very successful. And I'm just like, there's more to it than having the ability to market yourself. So Trev says he's planned a tracking room of approximately 5 by 4.5 meters where I have my drums, then looking at the possibility of building a control room on the back of it, basic planning. Oh, okay, so he's talking about building. I think if you're talking about, Trevor, if you're talking about building a control room on the back of it, that's different from if you're talking about having a room. And Trev said he will contact you. Okay, good. And SBD Guitar says, John is designing my tracking and control room spaces, and I'm super excited constructing it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good. That's a nice crossover between Academy members and you. Great. Mark says, is there a room size that gets too small to use?
Below 1,500 cubic feet or 42 cubic meters, it's difficult. Now, I've had people have half that size and have a working space. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's good, but it's workable. I recently had a conversation with a guy inquiring whether he should do this or not. And I said, your room is really just too small. Look, what do you need? What do you need to do with this? And he says, well, I need to record my voice and guitar. I said, oh, okay, do this. So I didn't even sell him anything. I just told him what to do, get the panels off my resources page and build that, do the ceiling and stuff, and make a little tracking space for himself. That's what these small rooms are great for. You make a booth. Do it up. But mixing, you need at least 1,500 cubic feet. That's length times width times height, 42 cubic meters.
What is, give me that in English for my dumb brain. So how wide is that room?
Okay, let's see.
Ish.
9 tall by 14 deep by 11 wide or something like that. Let me think. Is that 1,500? Let me add this up.
So it's probably
So I
about,
got 11 times 14 times 9. That's too small. So we're going to go 13 times 15 times 9. That's 1,700. Okay. You'll figure it out.
it's probably about half the size, half to approaching 2/3, but probably closer to half, 60% the size of my control room. So maybe 50 to 60%. So my rooms are nearly twice as big as what you're saying. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And this feels like for a home. It's obviously not in my home; it's behind my home. But for a home studio, I've always felt like it felt professional. I came in here, Jack Douglas is mixed in here. Lots of people mix in here. So, okay. I just don't know. I can't imagine I'm going to go any smaller because with the 2-car garage, it's going to be about this size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this is. What would you say, Eric? Is this 2 cars? This is like 1.5. I think this is like a 1.5 car garage at the moment. But yeah. So for the new space that we're going to do, it'll be 2-car garage, and I won't have a quote unquote separate tracking room. I'll just have a drum kit in the corner. The reality is like we track drums. If we're doing an album in this environment, we're getting drums. A drummer, Matt Starr, might come down for 5 hours and track drums, and that's an album. And then I'm working on the album for 2 to 3 weeks, mixing it, overdubbing and mixing it. So it's, to me now, I feel like it's. Unless I'm doing full live bands these days, which is very unlikely in my home environment. That's why I go to Sunset Sound. But unless I'm doing that, which is a lot less than it used to be, it makes no sense for me to have a separate tracking room. I could just have the drum kit in the corner with the mics ready to go, put some headphones on for the 4 or 5 hours every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
But trust me, I love huge live rooms. Tracking rooms, I love them. Something beautiful.
How high can you get your ceiling? And I'm asking you this, and this is for your students as well.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough in the new environment. This one here has this back house is like it's got this kind of vaulted ceiling.
Cable.
So in the control room, it's been flattened and lowered, but in the live room, we kept it high. So there's all dead space above here. This is a room within a room, you can see in the control room. But in the live room, it's vaulted. It's not particularly high. I don't know what that is. Maybe 14.
Mm-hmm. At the peak, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe 14 to 16 at the peak.
Yeah.
But it's just enough to just let it breathe enough. I like the drums in that room. I mean, they're always going to be. It's a small room. It's quite dead. It's always going to be a big, fat 70s kind of drum sound. But I make do with what I've got, and then add things to it afterwards if necessary. I'm missing. I'm trying to read some of these questions. I'm jumping in halfway through, so I don't understand them. John has designed the room, so just waiting on lockdown in India to be lifted, constructing. Oh, wow, another. So Krishna Rao.
Oh, yes.
Another Academy member you've done a room for.
Hey. Yeah, I didn't know that he was Academy. Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, he told me early on, but I forgot.
This is great. I like this natural osmosis. It's great that we're all working together without even realizing it. It's much more natural than, like I said, than the ad on the YouTube video. I much prefer organic. It's more. I trust it more. Those are the best. We're building relationships for a handful of artists. Blah blah blah. Okay. Our new control on this, as Chaz says, space is 26 by 16 with 12-foot ceilings. That sounds pretty huge.
That's nice. 26 by 16.
He said, any suggestions for firing speakers across the short distance of the room instead of the long distance? That should be okay, isn't it? By 16.
That's large. That's large, but why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do it because I have a console. Like if I put that console and stuck it at one end,
it won't fit. It won't fit
yeah,
the short end. Yeah.
it would just about fit, but it didn't really make any sense. And we did talk about it. And then there was also glass at one end, which is covered with gear and stuff. But there was also the theory of like, well, if we put a console, then fire it down to a pane of glass. Doesn't that sound a little crazy?
Bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay, the man with the 26 by 16 by 12 room.
Yeah, Chaz.
Beware of common denominators. And go to my website and resources page, download my room mode calculator and plug in your numbers there. Okay? And double check, make sure you don't have any double incidences, make sure you don't have clumping, your modes clumping together tightly in spots and leaving large spaces otherwise. The first thing you need to do is you need to pass Oscar Bonello's criteria. It's the second graph on the bottom with the red and blue lines. Pass that and you move on.
Right.
Move on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Okay, Chaz, I just posted the link again, so if you see that up there. Trev says, what issues would I get from tracking drums within a control room? I don't. I mean, I've done it a million times. I go to a million different people's studios. Not a million, I'm exaggerating, but so many people I know have a drum kit sitting in the corner of a studio. Eric Valentine does, And if it's good enough for Eric Valentine, it's good enough for me. To me,
the only problem with tracking in a control room is monitoring it. And when you're really doing tracking drums, you like to bring it up on the speakers and feel it kicking you in the face. But you use headphones and you have to deal with that. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. Only difference.
Yeah, it's just a learning curve. You're going to track it with headphones on, and then you're going to listen back later, make adjustments based on what you hear in the speakers, and then next time you're tracking drums, it's better. It's really... the beauty of having your own studio for all of us is we set up mics on cabinets and drums and stuff. We get it to sound good, and then we're able to replicate it every time, rather than turning up at a random studio and that learning curve of trying to understand a new room that you've never worked in. So if anything, it's a bonus. I mean, to me, it's like, I don't see it as a downside at all. Mm-hmm. How would you treat a room with an eave on one side of the room down the longest wall?
You mean the ceiling slanting
I don't
like
know,
that?
Yeah. What do you mean, Mark? Do you mean the ceiling, or do you mean the where the windows go out or go in, depending how you look at it? Could you clarify, Mark, what the eave means? Okay. With large format's a bad idea or not, but looks darn sexy. Yes, I mean I personally like large format consoles, but I don't think we're going to put. We're on the fence because we have one in storage. We don't know whether to put a large format console into the new room or not. I don't know. We've got one sitting in storage, and we already have two, so we have 3 large format consoles. So I don't know. Maybe we'll put one in there. When you're using your room calculator, do you average your ceiling heights? I have different ceiling pitches in different parts of the room. Interesting question.
Yeah, you kind of have to. Because a room mode calculator really only works on a rectangular cuboid.
Right.
And yeah, you can calculate it, but it's going to take you hours to figure out all the different. You can just get a best idea.
Right.
But that one reason is why I go for a rectangular cuboid, and I don't slope my ceilings or anything. And then otherwise it's Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Right.
So I like to know ahead of time, if possible.
Mark says, what version of Excel do you need to run these sheets? He said he couldn't open them.
Oh dear. Oh, really? Well, I've got the latest version, which may present a problem. I wonder if you can down save them. They're at least 2016, the XL, at least.
Yeah, I'm on a Mac. I'm opening everything. I'm clicking on everything here on the Mac, and not having any issues.
What about now for calculating on the Mac? You're going to need to use the macros, which is the Control Shift S for sort, and Control Shift C for copy once you've entered your dimensions, and it should change the numbers. It should do all the calculations for you. It's
Okay.
a complicated spreadsheet, those room mode calculators.
Just downloading this here quickly. I'm just checking everything to make sure.
Now, sorry, Mac users, and most of you guys are. I'm sorry.
I'm not. This isn't opening up for me either. Remote calculator metric. Maybe I'll have to check it in a second, but it's not opening for me either on this.
I'm just going to open mine here to see what version is this. Oh, it's a 2019. Yeah. I've got 2019 XL, so. Yeah.
Right. I should. We'll double check in a minute.
Well, thanks for the heads up. What I shall do, let me just see if I can change it here. I'm just going to open my remote calculator metric, for example, right here. And if I go save as, let's see. Well, I can save as.
We're talking about the room mode calculator, I believe. That's what I'm trying to open.
Yeah, okay. XL macro enabled workbook XLSM. That's really if I save it as a XL97 to 2003, it's going to be pissed off because it needs to be macro enabled. XLSM. And I think anything up to 2013 works for that. Down or yeah. It could be you need the Microsoft, not the generic.
Yeah. Not the open source or something. I don't know.
Right. You really do need. Sorry. But
Anita says it opens with OpenOffice. So we're all I want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about the tools. Are you opening it all in the tools? So room ratios new and room mode calculator metric, for instance. Just let us know if you're able to open those. As long as your speakers are not rear ported, soffit mounting should probably work. Check the speaker manufacturers and specs. So so soffit mounting.
Correct. Yeah, but look, have you guys go outside your house?
Yeah.
And look at the edge of your roof where it comes down, and that part that comes under the roof right there at the edge of the wall. That's a soffit.
Right.
Don't want to ever put your speakers in the soffit.
Right. Right.
Or in the early days, we put speakers in a box up high in a soffit, like air conditioning ducts and stuff, in a soffit. And they sound horrible because there are many acoustical problems with that. So I don't call it soffit mounting anymore. I call it flush mounting. I'm trying to correct that worldwide, but it's not going to happen. But at least I'm just going to keep trying. So rear ported speakers, no, they're no good for soffit or flush mounting. Also, powered speakers, you must remove the amplifiers if you're going to put them in a flush mount, whether it's hard or soft. You need to mount them beside the speaker, not under the speaker. Never mount the amp under the speaker because you'll have heat convection currents going past the tweeter and cause a shimmering effect.
Interesting.
I've seen some major big studios with huge systems, freestanding ATCs, for example, with the amplifiers right under them. And I go, no, that's not going to work.
Right, right.
Anyway, yeah.
But you're not a big fan of flush or soffit mounting at all?
Me, I am.
Oh, you
I
are?
am.
Okay.
I am. That's the main thing.
Okay, okay.
That's what you should do. If you're not flush mounting, you will have speaker boundary interference response, and there's nothing you can do about it other than position your speakers forward and back until you get it right.
Can I ask you a contentious
yes,
question?
Please. I love those.
Yeah, this is because this academy is private. What do you think of barefoot speakers?
Oh, I like the idea, but I'm not really that impressed with the results when we've had them in many of our rooms. I think they're a little underpowered too. Not sure, but
right,
seem to be that way.
Right. I had a very famous producer, engineer, and mixer that I interviewed that had a pair. And off camera, I think it was off camera, wasn't it? Yeah, it was definitely off camera. And you know who I'm talking about, Eric. I said to him, I said, "Did you buy these?" Because I don't personally use them, and I've been in rooms, and I'm like, it's okay. So I just wanted to know, and I've got nothing against the company or anything. It's just I just think they're very expensive, and I haven't quite heard them sound really expensive to me. I don't really understand. So I said to this very famous producer, engineer, mixer, who will go nameless, but Eric knows what I'm talking about. And I said, "Did you buy these because you wanted to have them and own them and use them as your main, use them as your main mixing speaker? Or did you buy them because you wanted to understand why everybody else bought them?" And he went, "The second one." And he goes, and also because he is of such a high level and he has so many clients coming through, he's one of those guys that always has whatever's the latest and greatest available. I remember I had a friend that worked at Guitar Center maybe 20 years ago. And he said that Stevie Wonder in Hollywood, Stevie Wonder is a huge client of theirs. And he comes in regularly, like at least once a month. And he's like a regular Guitar Center client. And I was like, wow, that must be amazing. He said, yeah, of course it is, mate. Stevie Wonder comes in, everybody's losing it. And I was like, well, what does he get? He goes, he comes in and buys, this is 20 years ago, he comes in and buys the latest synthesizer. So he just comes in and he's like, I've been hearing about the new Korg, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it was the Triton in those days. Show me one. Yeah. And they show him the Korg, and he starts, he starts messing with it and trying stuff. And he's like, cool, wrap it up. I'm taking it home. And it's not to say that Stevie Wonder is making new records with the Triton, but he wants to know what's the latest, what's the greatest, what's the new sounds are, what's everybody using. And it makes sense. So, yeah. So maybe I got this wrong. My amplifier is racked in a small room right against my workstation, other noisy stuff. I don't think it's... No, if you have your amplifiers racked in a separate area, I think most people I know who know what they're doing that I've worked with have them in like a glass case, like away from everything with AC keeping everything cool, and it's soundproofed and it's nowhere near any kind of audible stuff. So it sounds like that's what you're doing, Kevin. It sounds perfect. Our amp room is actually in the bathroom with everything. It's nothing, not even anywhere near this room. So I think that's pretty standard in most studios. Yeah. But I do see, I know what you mean. I do see people that put the power amps under the speakers. I think they do it because they're trying to be like, hey, look at this. We've got these big power amps, man. That's the only...
Look at the tubes. Yeah. And it's worse if you have tubes because that's really hot. Yeah. And it'll shimmer. It will. It'll affect what you hear.
Anita says both Matric and Imperial will open up with OpenOffice, but the macros are disabled by default. It can be changed in the settings. There you go, Anita. She solved the problem.
Very good.
Nate says you can also save it to your Google Drive and then right-click with Sheets and Bob's your uncle. Okay.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's wonderful news.
Okay, good. So the question, would speaker placement on the sides of the boxes and tweeters sound wrong? Wouldn't it? Oh, they're asking about the barefoots. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I think the barefoots sound bad. I don't think that's what I'm saying. I don't think that's what John's saying. I'm just saying, for a pair of speakers that can cost like minimum $6,000 to $8,000, I go, yeah, sound okay? Just like, that's the thing with me is like, I like to get behind, if something's very expensive, a human being, a mixer, a piece of equipment, whatever it might be, if it's expensive, I want it to be the best.
Exactly. Yeah. I want my money's worth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like the little old lady. Where's the beef?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're one of these people that's very blessed to have a budget of $100,000 to buy speakers, then sure, go and buy 4 or 5 different types. Experiment. I'm trying to find some more questions. Lots of chat. Let's see. Trevor's asking basically the question we just talked about. For all the questions, sorry for all the questions. Don't be sorry. Is it advisable to recess my monitors into walls or get rid of front wall interaction, or this may be an option for me? I think
if you want accuracy, flush your speakers. Yes,
right.
But it's a design. It's not something just stick them in the wall. It doesn't work that way. You know, it's like any response to anything scientific or mathematical. You know, well, it doesn't work like that. It's, have to do, there are certain parameters that you have to follow. Right. But yes, flushing is best. It's accurate, most accurate.
Lauren said Aspen had his Macintoshes on display in the control room. Yeah, because they're beautiful looking. But I don't think Aspen stuck them underneath the speakers, Lauren. I think Aspen was a bit smarter than that.
Set them off to the side, not a problem.
Yeah.
Put them right there. Have your speakers here, your amps over here, or in the middle. It's fine. Amps in the middle, speakers here. No problem. As long as they're not underneath, right.
Great. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Eric will do an edit on this to edit out all of the stops and starts and make it one complete video, because there's going to be when people come back to this, there'll be like a 15-minute dead space while we lost the internet. But so he's going to take that black screen out and make it into one thing. Does anybody else have any burning questions, any desires? Thomas says diffusers on the ceiling, yes or no?
I do that in tracking rooms all the time. Yes. Control rooms, no.
But are you into the cloud? Do you fly the cloud over the seating position?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I try to get as much absorption over the desk as possible.
Right. Okay.
It needs to be a black hole there.
Mark's asking, is an electronic bass trap like the PSI Audio AVVA C20 an alternative for a control room if you cannot do any other measurements and stuff?
If you got the money, honey, we got the time.
Yeah.
It works. Yeah, they work.
Okay,
if you
great.
Got the money, they're not cheap, and you need a few of them. Yeah, they work great.
How do they work for a dumb guy like me?
Inverse phase. You got the wave there, and it inverts it, and it counters it, and nulls it out.
Yeah, the new Genelex speakers, they've got the subwoofer. They call it the subwoofer that's not the subwoofer, and I was really impressed with it. But it's the same thing. It's because this world of the inverse phase thing has been in PAs for a good 10 years longer than it has been in
Yes.
recording studios. My friend Matt Butcher was telling me about it 15 plus 20 years ago, about how it's changed for him. And then I went to go and see, I don't know what band it was. It was either the Gorillaz or Blur or whoever he was touring with at the time. And it was insane. We walked down, because, he had his the sound desk right in the middle of the stadium, but then there was a walkway right down the middle. So it was an incredible experience to be in a huge festival, like 80,000 people, and you're walking down the middle through all these people. And we walked right down the middle while the band was playing, took a right on the side of the stage, and then just as we got past the PA, the sound went off. It was insane. I was like, where's all the low end? He goes, oh, no, it's because of the way this inverse phase works. We're making low end directional now. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's insane. So the low end is just going forward. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you'd stand behind a PA and all you hear is, and you'd be like, what? And now you stand behind a PA and it's like this. It's like crystal clean. It's just all going out. It's amazing what they can do. So that's been around forever. And then I went to England and Genelec did the whole They launched their new system, which is pretty amazing, and it's that exact what we're talking about. And it's crazy when you turn on the low end, it doesn't have that separation. You know what I'm talking about, John, where traditionally subwoofers sort of just feel like you just added 20 to 40 hertz going. It doesn't. It feels like you still hear your speakers, but you hear this addition, as opposed to like suddenly. It doesn't feel like they're connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's something about this new system which is just connecting everything top to bottom, which I love. Darko says, what do you think?
Like you closed the laptop and turned on the speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Mm-hmm.
Darko says, what do you think about speaker placement 1 inch above the ear high and angled down exactly to the ears?
Don't angle it.
Don't angle your speakers.
Now, it depends on the distance, okay? In many of our flush speakers, the vertical center of the speaker system, the focal point, like with an ATC SCM 110s, okay, is the mid-range. The mid-range will be about 4 inches above the ear in the flush.
Right.
So that's higher, and the tweeter's higher than that. So it's not bad, but do not angle them. This is, we're talking about mistakes. How many mistakes have you made?
Millions.
I've made a few. And we angled some speakers once in a flush wall, and they were angled down, so it fucked up, okay? That's not good. Don't do it. Genelec has written papers about angling it to a certain degree. No, don't do it. Don't. Just set them straight. That way, when you sit down, stand up, it's all the same. You can walk around the room. Everything is, yeah.
You know what's interesting? The Bop Studios, I just found it online. I know the owner. I've spoken to him a couple of times because we were in United a few years ago. We've been in a lot, but we were in a few years ago, and we used the Focusrite. And then he wrote to me and said, "Oh, I've got another one of those consoles."
Yeah.
He says that it's a maintenance hog. They're trying to keep it up and running. United completely rebuilt theirs from like the ground up. It's almost nothing like the original. I mean, that's not entirely true. I'm just saying they did a lot of things to it. Sorry, exaggerated, but they changed transformers and all kinds of stuff. But that's a beautiful looking console. Yeah. Now I know. I was like, Bop Studios. Why does that sound familiar? And then I saw a photo. I was like, aha! They have one of those Focusrites.
Yeah.
Sam wants to know, says Mary, about transmission drive speakers would do in a control room setting. I'm not sure what they mean. Transmission drive speakers?
Transmission line. That's the word that I was looking for earlier when I had my brain fart.
Oh, okay. So what are those?
Transmission line. It's PMC do transmission line. So do ATCs. But PMC is a transmission line. It's a different than porting at. I don't know all the details. I'd have to open my books and look at some papers.
Right.
But what is the question?
It just said, how would they do? So, like, basically in a control room, like, basically, are they good? Would you use them?
They would do fantastic. Yeah, that's a PMC. Or an ATC, they're different styles of transmission line, but yeah, they do very, very, very well.
Fantastic.
Okay? Especially if you have the room length.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we do have poor Mr. John Brandt sitting up at like 1 o'clock in the morning now. So, any other any burning desires at 13 minutes past 1 in the morning for him? Let's take another question, and I'll see if there's one. See if I've missed any. I may have missed something, so I'm trying to get everybody. Remember, there's already we've already identified 3 Academy members that are all actually working with John on their studios. So, first of all, go to his resources page and see what you can garner for free. And feel free to donate to him. And then, of course, if you want more clarification and you want some expert advice on building your own room or improving your existing room, you can email him and work something out with him directly. Mary and Sam said they want to stand apart from their competition. Meaning, yeah, I think if you can invest in some PMCs or ATCs, I think it's the way to go. Like I said, Maurice at PMC is a very good friend of mine. He's very talented. He's very hands-on. I think one of the problems PMC have had in America is that Maurice is a freaking genius, but there's only one of him. And that's what happens sometimes with companies. It's like, you know, I recommend him and people go to him and he's swamped by 100 people a day. You know, but all of these companies are essentially boutique companies. They're making...
True.
Yeah.
It's true. This whole industry is boutique.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, of the percentage of the people in the world, how many are musicians?
Yep. Yep, exactly.
Deal with music business.
Okay. Fantastic. All right, everybody. Thank you ever so much. Thank you, John. It's been a lot of fun. And I want to do this more regularly, if that's okay.
I'd love it. This would be fantastic. I would love to do that.
I think because it's probably the number one. Yeah, it's the number one question. You know, as soon as you get outside of mixing things, it's the number one question. It's like, oh, what speakers should I get? Where should I put them? How's the room sound? Et cetera, et cetera. And it's hard to have a conversation authoritatively about this because I know the dumb stuff, the logical stuff about symmetry and creating an equilateral triangle as a seating position, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So this has been very, very rewarding. And Chaz says, let John, I'll message him again soon. He said you will know him as Charles H. Root. So,
oh, yeah, I know Charles. Yeah.
Marvelous. So he said he'll get back to you. And Trev said he just sent you an introductory email.
Okay.
And Adrian says, thanks ever so much for setting this up. And thanks to Eric, too. Eric gets the shout out. Woo! Woo! Eric and his hair.
That's great. Guys, I really appreciate this. This is fun. I enjoy this immensely, and I'm so thankful to be able to help. Great. I really am, and I really appreciate this. Let's do this again soon.
Yep, definitely.
And make it a thing if we can. That way we don't have to. You know me, I'll go off on and I'll tell everything at once, and it'll too much information.
I don't think. Don't worry about it. Nobody can talk as much as me. You're fine. I'm famous for it.
True. Well, we could do this again, and we could just focus on single points and answer questions, and that's when we'll do the most benefit right there.
Fantastic. You rock. Mary and Sam said they'll reach out to you through email, and Sam and she look forward to building a working relationship. Wonderful.
All
Fantastic.
Right.
All right. Thank you, John.
Okay. I'm going to go pass out now.
I would hope so at 1:17 in the morning.
Okay.
Thanks, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for the great questions, and thanks for bearing with us during Spectrum Business Internet downtime on us. Thanks. Have a marvelous time.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.